I found my daughter in the woods, barely alive. She whispered it was my Mel. She said my blood was dirty. I took her home and texted my brother, it's our turn, time for what Grandpa taught us. Before we continue, a warning. This is a fictionalized educational case study based on real federal prosecutions. According to FBI statistics, nearly 60% of all hate crimes are motivated by racial bias, often escalating within families. This story examines those warning signs and why federal law protects victims better than vigilante justice. Now let me tell you my story. The call came on a Friday evening, while I was grilling burgers in my backyard. My phone rang, my son-in-law Brett's name on the screen. Malcolm, Kenya's missing. His voice was panicked, barely controlled. She went for a walk this morning and never came back. It's been 9 hours. I dropped the spatula. What do you mean missing? She left at 9 this morning to walk the trail behind our house. Said she'd be back in an hour. That was 9 hours ago, Malcolm. I've been searching the woods all afternoon. I can't find her. My daughter Kenya, 28 years old, elementary school teacher, married to Brett Harrison for 3 years, missing for 9 hours. Did you call the police?
Yes.
They said she hasn't been gone long enough. Told me to wait 24 hours before filing a missing person report. They said she probably just lost track of time or her phone died. I was already moving toward my truck. I'm coming right now. Call my brother Jerome. Tell him to meet me at your house. I live in rural Georgia, about 20 minutes outside Savannah. Kenya and Brett live in a newer suburban development closer to the city. Nice neighborhood, safe, or so we thought. I made the drive in 15 minutes, pushing my truck harder than I should have. Jerome's construction company van was already in Brett's driveway when I arrived. My brother was 49, built like a tank from decades of construction work. Reliable as sunrise. Brett met us at the door. 30 years old, white accountant, decent guy who loved my daughter. Right now he looked terrified. I've been up and down that trail 10 times, Brett said. Calling her name, nothing. Her phone goes straight to voicemail. Show us the trail, I said. The trail started at the edge of their backyard, led into a dense forest preserve that stretched for miles. Popular with joggers and dog walkers during the day, but it was nearly 7 p.m. now. Getting dark, Jerome and I grabbed flashlights from our vehicles. Brett tried to come with us. Stay here, I told him. In case she comes back, keep calling her phone. Jerome and I entered the woods. The trail was well maintained, clearly marked. We walked quickly, calling Kenya's name every few minutes. Kenya? Baby? Can you hear me? Nothing. We passed other trail markers, went deeper into the woods. The trail branched off in several directions. We should split up, Jerome suggested. Cover more ground. No. We stay together. If someone took her, I didn't finish the sentence. Didn't want to voice what I was thinking. We'd been searching for almost 2 hours when my flashlight caught something off the trail. A splash of color in the ravine about 30 feet down the slope. Kenya's jacket, the purple one she wore everywhere. Jerome. I scrambled down the embankment, my brother right behind me, and there she was, my daughter, lying at the bottom of a ravine, barely visible in the fading light, covered in blood. Kenya. I slid down the last few feet, landing hard beside her. She was unconscious, face swollen and bruised beyond recognition, head wound bleeding badly, clothes torn, lying in a position that told me she'd either fallen or been thrown. Call 911, I shouted to Jerome. He was already on the phone. We need an ambulance. Woman found unconscious in the forest preserve off Oakwood Trail. Severe head trauma, bleeding heavily. I touched Kenya's neck, feeling for a pulse. It was there, faint, but there. Baby, can you hear me? It's Dad. I'm here. You're safe now. Her eyes fluttered, barely opened. Dad? Her voice was so weak I almost didn't hear it. I'm here, baby. Don't move. Ambulance is coming. It was... She struggled to speak. Blood on her lips. It was Linda. Linda. Brett's mother. Kenya's mother-in-law. Linda did this. Linda Harrison. Kenya's eyes were unfocused, struggling to stay open. She said my blood was dirty. Said I was polluting her son. My heart stopped. She brought me here. Said we were going for coffee. To talk. Make peace. Kenya was crying now, tears mixing with blood. But when we got here, she pushed me, started hitting me with a rock. She kept saying, my kind shouldn't exist, that I was contaminating the family, that she had to cleanse. Stay with me, baby. Stay awake. She said I wasn't human, that black people were animals. She was going to kill me, Dad. She tried to kill me. Kenya's hand grabbed my arm weakly. Don't let her hurt my baby. What baby? I'm pregnant. 10 weeks. Didn't tell anyone yet. Was going to surprise you this weekend. The words hit me like a physical blow. My daughter was pregnant, and someone had tried to murder her. Brett doesn't know. No one knows. Just me. And now Linda tried to kill us both. Her eyes closed. She went limp. Kenya! Jerome was beside me. Ambulance is 5 minutes out. They're coming. I held my daughter's broken body and felt something dark and ancient rise up inside me. A rage I'd kept buried for decades. The rage my grandfather had taught me to control but never eliminate. Someone had tried to murder my child because of the color of her skin, because she'd married a white man and his racist mother couldn't accept it. Linda Harrison had lured my daughter into the woods and beaten her nearly to death with a rock. While Kenya was pregnant with my first grandchild, the ambulance arrived. Paramedics scrambled down into the ravine with a stretcher and medical equipment. Severe head trauma, one paramedic said. Fractured skull, possible internal bleeding. We need to move fast. They stabilized her neck, carefully lifted her onto the stretcher, started an IV oxygen mask. I rode in the ambulance with her. Jerome followed in his van. On the way to the hospital, I pulled out my phone and texted Jerome. Linda Harrison tried to kill my daughter because of racism. Because Kenya married her son, Kenya's pregnant. Linda tried to kill my daughter and my grandchild. Jerome texted back, what do you want to do? I stared at the message for a long moment, watching paramedics work on my unconscious daughter. Seeing her broken face, the blood, the bruises, I typed, we handle this the right way first. But if the law doesn't work, remember what Grandpa taught us. Jerome's response was immediate. I remember, at the hospital, doctors rushed Kenya into emergency surgery. Severe concussion, fractured skull, 3 broken ribs, internal bleeding, defensive wounds on her hands and arms where she tried to fight back. And somehow, miraculously, the baby's heartbeat was still detectable. 10 weeks pregnant. A tiny life that had survived what should have killed it. I sat in the surgical waiting room still covered in my daughter's blood. Brett arrived 20 minutes later. He saw me and broke down. Oh God. Is she alive? Please tell me she's alive. She's in surgery. Critical condition. What happened? Who did this? I looked at my son-in-law, this white man who'd married my daughter despite his family's objections, who'd chosen Kenya over his racist mother's approval. Your mother happened. Brett's face went blank. What? Kenya told me before she lost consciousness. Your mother did this. Linda Harrison took her into the woods, called her blood dirty, beat her with a rock, and tried to kill her. That's impossible. Brett's voice was barely a whisper. My mother wouldn't, she couldn't. Jerome stepped forward. Your mother ever use racial slurs? Ever say she didn't approve of the marriage? Brett couldn't look at us. She didn't come to our wedding. She said she didn't approve of the relationship. What else did she say? I asked. Brett was shaking. She said our children would be mongrels, that I was betraying my race, that black people were inferior, but I told her if she couldn't accept my wife, she couldn't be in our lives. We haven't spoken to her in 6 months. I thought, cutting her off was enough. So she's been stewing in her hatred for 6 months, Jerome said. And today she acted on it. Did she ever threaten Kenya directly? I asked. She sent texts early on, saying Kenya had trapped me, that she was using me, that our marriage was unnatural. I blocked her number. Told her we were done. I never thought she'd actually hurt Kenya. A doctor approached. Family of Kenya Reynolds? We all stood. She's out of surgery, we've stabilized her for now. The skull fracture was severe, and there's significant brain swelling. We've induced a coma to give her brain time to heal. And the baby? Brett asked. Still has a heartbeat. It's early, but the fetus appears to have survived the trauma. We'll monitor closely. Can we see her? ICU, 2 visitors at a time. I went in first with Brett. Kenya looked so small in that hospital bed. Tubes and wires everywhere. Bandages covering half her head. Face so swollen I barely recognized her. This was my baby girl. The daughter I'd raised alone after her mother died when she was 8. The bright, beautiful woman who'd become a teacher because she loved children. Now lying broken because a racist couldn't accept that her son loved a black woman. Brett was crying. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I should have known my mother was capable of this. You couldn't have known, I said. But part of me wondered, Shouldn't he have? Two detectives arrived an hour later, Detective Martin, a black woman about 40, and Detective Cooper, a white man about 45. They took our statements. I explained everything. Kenya going for a walk, not returning, finding her in the ravine. She told me before losing consciousness that Linda Harrison attacked her. I said. Brett's mother, said Linda, called her blood dirty. Said she was polluting the family, beat her with a rock. That's a very serious accusation, Detective Martin said. Did anyone witness the attack? No, but my daughter identified her attacker, and she's fighting for her life right now. We'll need to question Mrs. Harrison, Detective Cooper said. Do you know where she lives? Brett gave them the address. Linda's house and pool are about 40 minutes away. The detectives left to bring her in for questioning. Jerome pulled me aside. Brother? I know what you're thinking. Do you? Grandpa's lessons. The old ways. Our grandfather, Elijah Reynolds, had been a member of the Black Panther Party in Oakland in the late 1960s. He'd moved to Georgia in the 70s, brought those lessons with him. He taught us that sometimes the law didn't protect black people, that sometimes you had to protect yourself and your family by any means necessary. He taught us how to fight, how to defend, how to disappear people who threatened the family. Jerome and I had grown up with those lessons, had never forgotten them. Linda Harrison tried to murder my daughter, I said quietly, for being black, for carrying a mixed-race child, and she's sitting somewhere comfortable with a lawyer while Kenya's in a coma. The law will handle her, Jerome said. Attempted murder, hate crime charges. She's going away for life. Will she, or will she get a sympathetic jury? White woman, concerned mother, temporary insanity defense? How many times have we seen white people walk away after killing us? This time is different. There's evidence. Kenya's testimony. The injuries speak for themselves. Let the system work, Malcolm. Give it a chance. I wanted to believe him, but 52 years of being black in America had taught me that the system didn't always work for people like us. The detectives found Linda at her house 2 hours later. She answered the door calmly. Normally, can I help you, Mrs. Harrison? I'm Detective Martin. This is Detective Cooper. We're investigating an assault. Your daughter-in-law, Kenya Reynolds, was found severely beaten in the woods this evening. Linda's expression didn't change. That's terrible. Is she all right? She's in critical condition. She's accused you of being her attacker. That's absurd. I haven't seen Kenya in months. My son made it very clear I'm not welcome in their lives. Where were you today between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m.? Here, at home, all day. Can anyone verify that? I live alone, but I didn't leave the house. Detective Martin noticed Linda's hands, scratches on her palms and forearms. Fresh scratches. Mrs. Harrison, how did you get those scratches? Gardening. I was working in my rose bushes yesterday. Those thorns are vicious. And the mud on your shoes? Linda glanced down at her shoes. There was mud caked on them. Fresh mud that matched the soil from the forest preserve. Also from gardening. Mrs. Harrison, we're going to need you to come with us for questioning. And we'll need to search your vehicle and home. I want a lawyer. That's your right. They arrested her, brought her to the station. A search of her car revealed evidence that made my blood run cold when Detective Martin called to tell me. A rock in her trunk, covered in blood and hair. Kenya's blood. Kenya's hair. Kenya's purse, which had been missing from the scene. Linda's cell phone with recent internet searches. How to stage an accident in the woods. And can skull fractures be fatal, and how long does it take to die from head trauma? And text messages. Linda had texted Kenya that morning. Hey Kenya, I know we haven't talked in a while, but I've been doing a lot of thinking. I was wrong to oppose your marriage. I want to make peace. Can we meet for coffee? Just the two of us? I'd like to apologize properly. Kenya had responded. I don't know, Linda. You've said some really hurtful things. Linda, I know. And I'm truly sorry. Please, give me a chance to make it right. For Brett's sake, if nothing else. Kenya had texted Brett. Your mom wants to meet. Says she wants to apologize. I'm nervous, but I think I should try. Meeting her at 9, Brett had responded. Are you sure? I can come with you. Kenya. No, she said, just us. Girl talk. I'll be back in a couple hours. Love you. That was the last text Kenya had sent. Linda had lured her under false pretenses. Pretended to want reconciliation, then drove her to a remote section of the woods and tried to murder her. Premeditated, calculated, cold-blooded. In the interrogation room, Linda sat with her court-appointed lawyer. Detective Martin laid out the evidence. Mrs. Harrison, we found the rock you used to beat Kenya. It was in your car trunk. It has her blood and hair on it. We have your phone showing you lured her to meet you under false pretenses. We have internet searches showing you researched how to kill someone and stage it as an accident. And we have Kenya's statement, given before she lost consciousness, identifying you as her attacker, the lawyer said. My client has no comment. But Linda couldn't stay quiet. She was ruining my son's life. Linda, don't say anything, the lawyer tried. Brett is a good boy from a good family. She trapped him, got him to marry her, and now she's pregnant again, trying to trap him forever. Mrs. Harrison, Kenya wasn't pregnant when they got married 3 years ago, but she is now. I saw the pregnancy test when I went to their house last month. You broke into their house? Detective Cooper asked. Linda, stop talking, the lawyer pleaded, but Linda was on a roll. The hatred she'd been holding inside for years came pouring out. Do you know what it's like to watch your son throw his life away? Watch him marry one of them. Those people, their children will be mongrels. Half-breeds. Not white, not black, nothing. Confused, unwanted abominations. I couldn't let her bring that thing into the world. I couldn't let my grandchild be polluted with her filthy blood. Detective Martin's voice was steady. So you decided to kill her? I decided to save my son. I called her, told her I wanted to apologize, that I wanted to make peace. She actually believed me. Stupid girl. I picked her up, drove her to the woods, told her we could walk and talk. I told her the truth, that her blood was dirty, that she was contaminating my family bloodline, that she needed to disappear. She tried to run, so I picked up a rock and hit her. Once, twice, 3 times. She fell. I kept hitting her until she stopped moving. I thought she was dead. I took her purse so it would look like a robbery, left her there for the animals to find. The lawyer had his head in his hands. I did what any mother would do, Linda said. I protected my son from race mixing, from genetic pollution, from the degradation of having mongrel children. The entire confession was recorded. Video and audio. When Detective Martin called me at the hospital to tell me about the confession, I felt my hands shaking. She confessed to everything, Martin said. On tape, admitted racial motivation, admitted premeditation. Mr. Reynolds, we're charging her with attempted murder, aggravated assault, and we're referring this to the FBI for federal hate crime charges. Federal charges? Yes, sir. This isn't just assault. What she did, attacking someone because of their race, trying to prevent a mixed-race child from being born, that's a federal civil rights violation under U.S. Code 24-9. The FBI is already reviewing the case. What does that mean? It means she's not just facing state charges. She's facing federal prosecution with mandatory minimum sentences. If convicted on federal hate crime charges, she's looking at life in federal prison. No parole. No governor's pardon. I absorbed this information. Federal charges. Civil rights violation. The FBI has an 85% conviction rate on hate crime cases. Detective Martin continued. Especially ones with this much evidence. Your daughter's attacker isn't walking away from this, Mr. Reynolds. I promise you that. After I hung up, I sat in the hospital waiting room trying to process what I'd just heard. The FBI was involved. Federal hate crime charges. Life in prison. The system was working, but the rage was still there. The voice in my head that sounded like my grandfather telling me that the law had never protected us, that I needed to handle this myself. I pulled out my phone and texted Jerome. It's our turn. Time for what Grandpa taught us. My phone rang immediately. Jerome, Malcolm, think about what you're saying. I've thought about it. Linda Harrison tried to murder my child. She deserves to pay, and she will pay. The FBI is involved. Federal hate crime charges. Life in prison without parole. What if it doesn't work, brother? Listen to me. They have her confession on tape. They have the weapon. They have Kenya's testimony. They have internet searches proving premeditation. The detective told you 85% conviction rate. Those are good odds. What are the odds if I handle it myself? Jerome was quiet for a moment. 100%. 100% chance you go to prison for murder. 100% chance Kenya raises your grandchild without you. 100% chance Linda's lawyers use your actions to get her sentence reduced because you contaminated the case. I hadn't thought about that last part. If you take revenge, Jerome continued, you become the criminal. You give her lawyers ammunition. Your Honor, the victim's family took the law into their own hands, showing this case isn't about justice but vendetta. You help her, Malcolm. You don't hurt her, but if you let the system work, if you let the FBI build their case, She goes to federal prison for life. And you stay free to be the grandfather your daughter needs. I sat with that for a long time. I know what Grandpa taught us, Jerome said quietly. But Grandpa didn't have the FBI on his side. Grandpa didn't have federal hate crime laws. Grandpa didn't have an 85% conviction rate. The world is different now. Not perfect, but different. Let it work this time. And if it doesn't, if she somehow walks, then we talk about other options. But not before. Not yet. I knew he was right. But the rage was still burning. Kenya needs you, Jerome said. Not revenge. You? I deleted the unsent text and went back to my daughter's bedside. 3 days later, Kenya woke up. I was dozing in the chair beside her bed when I heard a small sound. Her hand moved. Kenya? I was on my feet instantly. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then finding me. Dad? Her voice was barely a whisper. I'm here, baby. You're safe. You're in the hospital. What happened? My head. You were attacked. In the woods. Do you remember? I watched as memory slowly came back. Her face changed. Fear. Then pain. Then anger. Linda. It was Linda. I know. She's in jail. She confessed to everything. The FBI is involved now. Federal hate crime charges. Tears started running down Kenya's face. She tried to kill me. She really tried to kill me. She said my blood was dirty, that I was contaminating her family, that our baby was an abomination. Brett rushed in, having heard the commotion. Kenya? Oh, thank God you're awake. He tried to hug her, but she flinched. The fear in her eyes wasn't for him, but the association was there. His mother had done this. I'm so sorry, Brett said. I'm so sorry. I should have protected you better. And the baby. Kenya's hand went to her stomach. A doctor came in. Your baby is fine. Remarkably, the pregnancy is progressing normally. You and your child are both fighters. Mrs. Harrison. Kenya started crying harder. Relief. Trauma. Overwhelming emotion. Later that day, FBI agents arrived to interview Kenya. Agent Johnson was a black woman in her 40s. Professional but compassionate. She sat down with Kenya, Brett, and me in a private conference room at the hospital. Mrs. Harrison, I need to explain what we're dealing with here. Agent Johnson said, this isn't just a state assault case. When someone attacks another person because of their race, when they try to kill someone to prevent a mixed-race child from being born, that's a federal civil rights violation. A hate crime under Federal Code 249. What's the difference? Kenya asked. State assault charges might result in 5 to 10 years with possibility of parole. Federal hate crime prosecution results in mandatory minimum sentences with no parole possibility. We're talking about life in federal prison. Agent Johnson pulled out a folder. Your attacker confessed on tape. She admitted racial motivation. She admitted she tried to kill you because of your race, and because you're carrying a biracial child. She used phrases like dirty blood and contamination and mongrels. In my 15 years with the FBI, I've never seen a clearer case of bias-motivated attempted murder. Our conviction rate on cases like this is 85%, and this case is stronger than most. Will she really go to prison? Kenya asked. Or will some jury sympathize with her? Ma'am, she confessed to attempted murder motivated by racial hatred, on video. The evidence is overwhelming. She researched how to kill you online. She lured you under false pretenses. She brought a weapon. She admitted everything. She's going to federal prison for the rest of her life. After the agents left, Kenya looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Dad, I know you. What do you mean? I know how you were raised. Grandpa's lessons. The Black Panther stuff. The protect the family by any means necessary philosophy. I didn't deny it. Promise me something, Kenya said. Anything. Promise me you won't do anything that puts you in prison. I need you. This baby needs you. She reached for my hand. I know you want revenge. I want it too. But the FBI agent just told us they have an 85% conviction rate. Those are good odds, Dad. And if you take revenge, 100% chance you go to prison. 100% chance I raise this baby without you. Is that what you want? No. Then let the system work. The FBI, the federal prosecutors, all of it. Let them do their job. What if they fail? Then we fight it legally. Appeals, media pressure, civil lawsuits, but not violence. Not Grandpa's way. She squeezed my hand. The world is different now than when Grandpa was in the Panthers. We have federal hate crime laws. We have the FBI on our side. We have tools he never had. Use those tools, not the old ways. I realized she was right. the world had changed. Not perfectly, but enough. I promise, I said. I'll let the system work. 4 months later, Linda Harrison's trial began. Kenya was 6 months pregnant now, visibly showing. She walked into that courtroom with her head high, one hand on her belly, the other holding Brett's hand. The courtroom was packed. Media, civil rights organizations, FBI agents, prosecutors. Kenya took the witness stand and told her story. Linda Harrison called me the morning of the attack. Kenya said, her voice steady despite the trauma. She said she wanted to apologize for the racist things she'd said about our marriage. Said she wanted to make peace. I was hesitant. She'd said terrible things over the years. Called me racial slurs. Said our children would be mongrels. But I thought maybe she'd changed. For Brett's sake, I wanted to try. She picked me up at 9 a.m., drove me to the forest preserve. Said we could walk and talk. But as soon as we were away from the parking lot, everything changed. She started saying horrible things. Kenya's voice shook slightly. But she continued. She said my blood was dirty, that I was polluting her son, that black people were inferior, animals, subhuman, that our baby would be an abomination, a mongrel, that shouldn't exist. She said she had to cleanse the family, that meant killing me and my baby. I tried to run. She picked up a rock and hit me in the head. I fell. She kept hitting me. I tried to fight back, but she was stronger than I expected. The last thing I remember is her standing over me saying, "Your kind shouldn't breed with ours. I'm fixing my son's mistake." Then everything went black. The jury, mixed race, mixed ages, mixed backgrounds, watched in visible horror. The federal prosecutor was a black woman named Patricia Williams. She presented the evidence methodically. The rock, with Kenya's blood and hair. Linda's phone with the internet searches. How to stage an accident. Can skull fractures be fatal? The text messages luring Kenya under false pretenses. And the confession video. The courtroom went silent as they played Linda's confession. Her voice cold and matter-of-fact, admitting she'd tried to kill Kenya to prevent a mixed-race child from being born. Using words like mongrel and genetic pollution and contamination. I did what any mother would do. I protected my son from race mixing. When the video ended, several jurors were visibly shaken. Linda's defense attorney tried to argue temporary insanity. My client experienced a mental breakdown, he said. The protective instinct of a mother for her son overwhelmed her rational judgment. She wasn't thinking clearly. This was a tragic lapse in judgment, not a calculated hate crime. But Prosecutor Williams destroyed that argument in her rebuttal. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about what the evidence actually shows. The defendant didn't have a breakdown. She planned this for at least a week. Williams pulled up exhibits on the screen. Look at these internet searches. How to stage an accident in the woods. Dated 7 days before the attack. Can skull fractures be fatal? Dated 5 days before. How long does it take to die from head trauma? Dated 3 days before. That's not a breakdown. That's premeditation. That's research. That's planning. She crafted a false reconciliation text specifically designed to lure Mrs. Reynolds into a vulnerable situation. She drove her to a remote section of the woods, not the main trail but a location 30 feet off the trail where she knew they wouldn't be seen. She brought a weapon, the rock. She attacked with enough force to fracture Mrs. Reynolds' skull in 3 places. She hit her repeatedly over and over even after Mrs. Reynolds fell unconscious, and then she took Mrs. Reynolds' purse to stage it as a robbery. She left her for dead and drove away. Williams paused, making eye contact with each juror. The defendant confessed on video that she did this because of race. Because Mrs. Reynolds is black. Because their child would be biracial. Under federal law, that's not insanity. That's a hate crime. That's attempted murder motivated by racial bias. And under Federal Code 249, that carries a mandatory life sentence. The defense had no effective counter. Brett testified, and his testimony was damning. The prosecutor asked me to explain my mother's behavior before the attack. Brett said, his voice shaking. Looking back now, I can see the pattern that I should have recognized earlier. First it was just comments when Kenya and I started dating. Are you sure about this? Then it escalated to outright slurs. Words I won't repeat in this courtroom. Then she demanded I choose her or Kenya. When I chose Kenya, when I told her she couldn't be in our lives if she couldn't respect my wife. She was cut off for 6 months. 6 months of complete silence. No calls, no texts, nothing. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, she texted Kenya saying she wanted to apologize, wanted to make peace. And that's when I should have known something was wrong. The prosecutor prompted him. Why should that have been a warning sign? Because that sudden friendliness after months of hatred, that wasn't real reconciliation. That was grooming. Setting up the attack. People don't go from calling someone racial slurs to genuinely wanting peace overnight. That pattern, racist comments escalating to isolation demands to threats to sudden reconciliation, that's not mental illness. That's radicalization toward violence. Brett looked at the jury. If I could tell other families in interracial relationships one thing, it would be this. Watch for that escalation. Racist comments become isolation demands, become threats, become sudden friendly contact. That last one, the fake reconciliation, that's when they're most dangerous. That's when they're planning something. Other witnesses testified. Neighbors who'd heard Linda make racist comments about Kenya. Family members who'd heard her talk about the marriage being disgusting and unnatural and genetic pollution. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They came back with a verdict. Attempted murder. Guilty. Aggravated assault. Guilty. Federal hate crime. Guilty. Linda showed no emotion. Just sat there staring straight ahead. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. Kenya gave her victim impact statement. She stood at the podium, 7 months pregnant now, and spoke directly to the judge. Your Honor, Linda Harrison tried to kill me and my unborn child because of the color of my skin. She called my blood dirty. She said I was contaminating her family. She beat me with a rock and left me to die in the woods like an animal. I survived. My baby survived. But we will carry this trauma for the rest of our lives. Kenya's voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly as she gripped the podium. I have nightmares about that day. Panic attacks when I'm alone. I'm afraid to go outside without my husband or my father with me. I'm afraid to trust people who seem friendly, because Linda seemed friendly that morning. She smiled when she picked me up. She smiled when we walked into the woods. She smiled right up until she pushed me and started hitting me. My daughter Kenya's hand went to her belly. Will grow up knowing that her grandmother tried to murder her before she was even born. How do I explain that to her? How do I tell her that someone hated her existence before she even existed? That someone thought she was an abomination, a mongrel, something that shouldn't be allowed to live? Tears were streaming down Kenya's face now. I want the maximum sentence, not for revenge, for justice, for every black person who's been told they're less than human, for every interracial couple who's been threatened, for every mixed-race child who's been called a slur or told they shouldn't exist. I want other racists to see that you cannot murder us and get away with it. Not anymore, not in 2025, not with federal hate crime laws, and I want my daughter to know that the legal system, however imperfect, protected her, that justice exists, that her life matters under the law. The judge listened carefully, reviewed the evidence, considered the federal sentencing guidelines. Mrs. Harrison, you committed a heinous crime, motivated by pure racial hatred. You lured your daughter-in-law to a remote location under false pretenses, with the premeditated intention of killing her to prevent the birth of a biracial child. The evidence shows extensive planning. Internet searches about how to kill someone and stage it as an accident. Text messages carefully crafted to lower her guard. Selection of an isolated location. Use of a weapon. Continued assault even after the victim lost consciousness. Theft of personal items to mislead investigators. And most damningly, your own confession on video admitting you did this because of race. Because you consider black people inferior. Because you consider biracial children mongrels and abominations. The judge looked directly at Linda. Under federal sentencing guidelines for hate crimes, and given the severity and premeditation of your actions, I sentence you to 25 years in federal prison on the hate crime charges, and 15 years on the attempted murder charges, to run consecutively. Total sentence, 40 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole. Linda would be 96 years old if she lived to complete her sentence. She'd die in prison. As the marshals prepared to take her away, Linda finally showed emotion. She turned in her chair and screamed at Kenya. This is your fault. You seduced my son. You ruined my family. You're destroying the white race with your filthy blood. Even now. Even facing 40 years in federal prison, even after everything, she showed no remorse, only hatred. The marshals forcibly removed her from the courtroom as she continued screaming racial slurs. Malcolm watched from the gallery. Jerome beside him. Justice. Jerome said quietly. Real justice. The system worked. This time, Malcolm replied, but he felt something release inside him. The rage that had been building for months. The temptation toward his grandfather's way. Kenya had been right. The world had changed. The FBI had taken the case seriously. Federal prosecutors had done their job. The jury had convicted. The judge had given the maximum sentence. The legal system had worked. Linda Harrison was going to federal prison for the rest of her life. Kenya and her baby were safe. And Malcolm wasn't in prison for murder. He'd be there to watch his granddaughter grow up. That was justice. Real justice. Kenya and Brett also filed a civil lawsuit against Linda Harrison for damages. The lawsuit claimed assault, attempted murder, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and medical expenses totaling over $200,000 from Kenya's hospitalization, surgeries, and ongoing therapy. Linda had assets. A house in Pula worth $350,000, retirement accounts totaling $180,000, savings and investments. The civil trial was brief. With Linda's criminal conviction, her liability was essentially proven. The only question was damages. The jury awarded Kenya $2.5 million. Medical costs, future therapy, pain and suffering, and punitive damages meant to punish Linda for the severity of her crime. Linda's assets were seized and liquidated. Her house was sold. Her retirement accounts were drained. Every penny went to Kenya. The money would pay for years of trauma therapy, medical monitoring for the baby, and create a trust fund for Kenya's daughter. A bitter irony that Linda's assets would support the grandchild she tried to kill. 3 months after the trial, Kenya gave birth. A beautiful, healthy baby girl. Kenya and Brett named her Ava. Biracial. Perfect. Everything Linda had tried to prevent from existing. Malcolm held his granddaughter for the first time in the hospital and felt tears streaming down his face. This is what she tried to destroy, he whispered to Jerome, who'd come to meet his great niece. This perfect, innocent child. Kenya was exhausted but glowing. Brett was overwhelmed with joy and relief. And Malcolm understood, finally and completely, why he'd made the right choice. If he'd sought revenge, if he'd followed his grandfather's lessons, he'd be in prison right now. He wouldn't be holding this baby. Wouldn't be here for Kenya. Wouldn't be part of this moment. Legal justice had taken longer than revenge would have. Had been frustrating at times. Had required faith in a system that hadn't always protected people who looked like him. But it had worked. And he was free to be the grandfather Ava deserved. Kenya struggled with PTSD in the months that followed. Nightmares about the attack. Panic attacks in parking lots or near wooded areas. Hypervigilance about who was around her and Ava. She started seeing a trauma therapist twice a week. Dr. Richardson was a black woman who specialized in assault survivors and hate crime victims. In one session about 4 months after Ava was born, Dr. Richardson explained something that helped Kenya understand her recovery. What you experienced wasn't just physical assault, Dr. Richardson said. It was an attack on your fundamental humanity. Linda Harrison told you, through words and violence, that you and your child shouldn't exist. That's a different level of trauma than random violence. Hate crimes create a specific type of psychological damage because they target your identity, your race, which you can't change and shouldn't have to change. The trauma says, you are not safe in the world because of who you are fundamentally. Recovery means relearning safety. But it also means processing that someone tried to erase you for existing. That takes time. Kenya nodded, tears streaming. I keep thinking about what I could have done differently. If I'd just said no to meeting her. If I'd brought Brett with me. Stop, Dr. Richardson said gently. This was not your fault. Linda Harrison planned this for at least a week. If not this day, she would have found another opportunity. The blame is entirely on her. Your job now is to heal. To be present for your daughter, to reclaim your life. Kenya also joined a support group for hate crime survivors. Hearing other people's stories, people who'd been attacked because of their race, religion, sexual orientation, helped her feel less alone. Brett struggled too, in different ways. His mother was in federal prison for trying to murder his wife. His entire extended family on his mother's side had cut him off, claiming the trial was biased, and Linda was the real victim. He'd lost his entire maternal family tree. But he'd gained Malcolm and Jerome, who treated him like family, supported him through the trauma, helped with Ava. Malcolm and Jerome installed security systems at Kenya and Brett's house, helped them move to a new neighborhood where they felt safer, were present, available, supportive. This was family, real family, not blood or race or color, but choice and love and showing up. 6 months after Linda's sentencing, Malcolm sat in his backyard thinking about everything that had happened. He'd been so close to seeking revenge the old way. His grandfather's teachings had been so loud in his head, the voice telling him the law wouldn't protect them, that he needed to handle it himself. that justice required blood. But Kenya had asked him to try the legal path, to give the system a chance, and it had worked. Not perfectly, not quickly. The legal process had taken months. Kenya still had trauma. The family was still healing. But Linda Harrison was in federal prison for 40 years. She'd die there. Kenya and Ava were safe, and Malcolm was free to be a grandfather, to watch Ava grow up, to support his daughter through recovery. He talked to Jerome about it one evening while they grilled burgers, the same meal Malcolm had been making when Brett's call came. "I almost threw it all away for revenge," Malcolm said. "But you didn't. You chose the right path." "Only because Kenya asked me to. If she hadn't, I don't know what I would have done. But she did ask, and you listened. That's what matters." Malcolm flipped a burger. "You were right about the statistics. 85% conviction rate for federal hate crimes. Those are good odds. Better than I thought." "The world's not perfect," Jerome said. "System's not perfect, but it's better than it was in Grandpa's time. And sometimes it works." "What about next time, when it doesn't work?" "Then we have options. Legal options, appeals, media pressure, civil suits. And if all that fails, if someone truly gets away with hurting our family, then we talk about other measures, but only after exhausting every legal avenue. Because the goal isn't revenge. The goal is keeping the family safe and together, and prison doesn't accomplish that." Malcolm thought about Ava, about holding his granddaughter, watching her smile, hearing her laugh, about being present for Kenya's recovery, for the milestones, for life. "You're right," he said. "Grandpa's lessons came from a time when we had no other options, but we have options now. Federal hate crime laws, FBI involvement, civil rights prosecutors. We should use those tools before we go back to the old ways." Jerome nodded. "And teach Ava that justice exists, that the law can work, that she matters under the law, that her life has value, legal value, constitutional value. That's the world we want her to grow up in." A year after the attack, Linda tried to reach out from federal prison. She wrote a letter to Brett, sent through the prison mail system. "Dear Brett, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I've had a lot of time to think in here. I was wrong about how I handled things. I miss you. I want to know about my granddaughter. Please write back. Love, Mom." Brett showed the letter to Malcolm and Kenya before deciding how to respond. Kenya read it carefully, her hands shaking slightly. "She says she was wrong about how she handled things. Not that she was wrong about racism, not that she's sorry for trying to kill me, just that she handled it wrong. She still thinks my blood is dirty," Kenya continued. "She just regrets getting caught. This isn't remorse. This is loneliness." Brett looked conflicted. "What should I do?" "That's your decision," Malcolm said. "She's your mother, but she tried to kill my wife. She called my daughter an abomination. How do I reconcile that?" Kenya touched his hand. "You don't have to reconcile it. You don't owe her forgiveness. You don't owe her access to our lives or Ava's life. She made her choices. She chose hatred over family. She chose violence over acceptance. These are the consequences." Brett nodded slowly. "I'm not responding. She lost the right to contact us when she tried to murder you. She'll never meet Ava, never be part of our lives. That's her consequence for what she did." Linda sent 3 more letters over the following months. All were ignored. Eventually she stopped trying. She would live out her sentence isolated, alone, cut off from the family she'd claimed to be protecting. Exactly what she deserved. 2 years after the attack, Kenya had rebuilt her life in ways that felt impossible at first. She still had hard days. Certain sounds, rocks hitting pavement, could trigger panic attacks. Certain locations made her anxious. Some scars don't heal completely, but she was teaching again, working with second graders, finding joy in her career and in watching children learn and grow. Ava was 18 months old now, walking, talking in small sentences, bright and curious and beautiful. She had Kenya's smile and Brett's eyes. The perfect blend of both parents. Everything Linda had tried to prevent from existing. Brett had fully committed to being the best husband and father he could be. He'd started therapy to process his mother's crimes and his own complicated grief. He'd built new family connections with Malcolm and Jerome. He'd learned that family isn't about blood. It's about showing up and doing the work and choosing love. Malcolm was present in Ava's life, every day, teaching her things, playing with her, being the grandfather she deserved. He'd never regretted choosing the legal path. Never wished he'd sought revenge. The family gathered at Malcolm's house for a Sunday barbecue. Kenya, Brett, Ava, Jerome, and several cousins and friends. Laughter, joy, Children playing. The smell of grilled food. Music playing. Life. Full. Messy. Beautiful life. Malcolm held Ava while Kenya and Brett set the table. Jerome was manning the grill. Everything normal. Everything peaceful. Malcolm thought about that night 2 years ago. Finding Kenya in the ravine. Barely alive. Her whispered words. It was my MO. She said my blood was dirty. His text to Jerome. It's our turn. Time for what Grandpa taught us. How close he'd come to throwing all of this away for revenge. But Kenya had saved him by asking him to choose the legal path. To trust that the system, flawed as it was, might work this time. And it had worked. Linda Harrison was in federal prison. She'd die there. She'd never meet Ava. Never be part of this family. Never experience this joy. Kenya was alive. Ava existed. The family was together and healing. That was justice. Not the revenge he'd wanted, but the justice his daughter and granddaughter deserved. I'm Malcolm Reynolds. I'm 52 years old. 2 years ago I found my daughter in the woods. Barely alive. She whispered. It was my mill. She said my blood was dirty. Linda Harrison, my daughter's white mother-in-law, had lured her into the woods under the pretense of reconciliation. Then beaten her with a rock and left her to die because she couldn't accept that her son had married a black woman. Kenya was 10 weeks pregnant. Linda tried to kill my daughter and my grandchild because of racism, because she believed in racial purity, because she thought mixed-race children were abominations that shouldn't exist. I wanted revenge. Every fiber of my being screamed for immediate brutal justice. I wanted to handle it the old way. The way my grandfather, a Black Panther in the 1960s, had taught me. My grandfather had taught me that sometimes the law doesn't protect black people. That sometimes you have to protect yourself and your family by any means necessary. I texted my brother, it's our turn. Time for what Grandpa taught us. I was ready to seek vigilante justice. Ready to make Linda Harrison pay in ways the legal system couldn't touch. But my daughter asked me to choose the legal path. To trust the system one more time. To give federal law a chance to work. And I learned 3 things that saved my family. First, I learned the warning signs that I should have recognized earlier. Linda's behavior showed a clear pattern of radicalization. Racist comments escalated to isolation demands. Choose between me and her. Then threats about what their children would be. Then 6 months of silence, followed by sudden friendly contact. That final stage, the fake reconciliation, that's when she was most dangerous. That's when she was planning the attack. If I could tell other families in interracial relationships one thing, it's this. Watch for that escalation pattern. Racist rhetoric that intensifies demands for isolation, obsessive talk about racial purity, then sudden attempts at reconciliation after long hostility. That's not mental illness. That's radicalization toward violence. And that's when you need to protect yourself legally. Document everything, report threats, get restraining orders. The signs were there. We just didn't know what they meant. Second, I learned that federal law is stronger than revenge. I spent that first week researching my options. Vigilante justice has a 100% rate of putting you in prison. You become the criminal. Your family loses you, and the original perpetrator may get reduced charges because you contaminated the case. Federal hate crime prosecution has an 85% conviction rate. Mandatory minimum sentences. Life in prison without parole. No governor's pardons. No early release. Linda Harrison got 40 years in federal prison because we chose legal accountability. She confessed on tape. The FBI built an airtight case. The federal prosecutor secured a conviction. If I'd chosen revenge, I'd be in prison now. Linda might have gotten a lighter sentence. And Kenya would be raising Ava without me. My grandfather's lessons came from a time when we had no other options. But federal hate crime laws exist now. The FBI takes civil rights violations seriously now. We have legal tools my grandfather never had. Those tools work more often than vigilante justice ever did. Third, I learned that documentation wins trials. Linda went to federal prison because Kenya saved the text messages showing the fake reconciliation. Because detectives found her internet searches about staging accidents and fatal skull fractures. Because investigators documented every scratch on her hands, every speck of mud on her shoes, every drop of blood in her car. Without documentation, it would have been Kenya's word against Linda's. With documentation, it was overwhelming evidence in federal court. If you're facing threats from family members, document everything. Screenshot texts, record threats, if legal in your state, photograph injuries, save voicemails, Create a paper trail. Evidence is what convicts perpetrators. Evidence is what keeps them in prison for life. If you or someone you love is facing hate-motivated violence, comprehensive resources including FBI reporting procedures, victim advocacy services, and legal aid organizations are listed in the description below this video. Choose safety, choose documentation, choose legal justice, and let the system work, because sometimes, not always, but sometimes it does work. And when it works, you stay free to be there for your family. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone out there recognize the warning signs and choose legal protection over revenge. Because Kenya was right. We have more power now than my grandfather ever had. Federal law, civil rights protections, advocacy organizations, FBI involvement, injustice, real legal justice protects families better than revenge ever could.